This is The Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media. Now, here's Jason Jones.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to The Jason Jones Show. I am your host, Jason Jones, broadcasting from our nation's capital, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, although it is still strange here. And this is the Jason Jones Show's special Father's Day episode. And so there is no better person on the planet Earth to join me for this show than the president of American Principles Project, Terry Schilling. He is a father, he is a son, he is a husband, and he runs an organization that fights for the interests of families. I've been in Washington, D.C. all week. My organization is to fight for vulnerable communities that don't have a voice. And in my mind, that's the child in the womb. That's the Nuba in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan, or the Uyghur, or the Kurds, or the Assyrians, or Chaldeans. But talking to Terry before we went on the air, it just dawned on me, the most vulnerable community in our nation is really the foundation of our civilization, the family. And until American Principles Project, there really hasn't been an organization to fight for their interests. Washington, D.C. is a city of squeaky wheels begging for grease. And if your wheel's not in the city, your wheel is not going to get any grease. That is the sad truth. Before we jump into the interview, this episode is being brought to you by Movie to Movement, promoting a culture of life, love, and beauty through the power of film. Go to movieToMovement.com and check out all of our movies, or go to wherever you watch movies, wherever you download movies, and put in Divided Hearts of America, and you will see our most recent film starring Benjamin Watson. This episode is also being brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project. Standing in solidarity with the vulnerable, go to thegreatcampaign.org. We need monthly donors. And I've been so grateful to all the monthly donors this podcast has given to our organization. When you're a monthly donor, you join us in standing shoulder to shoulder with the most vulnerable communities in the world. And it is Father's Day. And I know a lot of you messed up. You made a big mistake. If you didn't get your father and or husband a gift, and you need to make up for that. And if you would have been timely, you could have just bought them a pillow at mypillow.com with the code Jones. But because you're late, you need to get them the mattress topper, the pillow, and the sheets. If you do that, that'll make up for you being late. So go to mypillow.com, use the code Jones. Get your dad, your pops, your husband, your honey bun, get them the robe, the slippers. What? You are the man among men. If you're the guy that sleeps under Giza Dream sheets on top of a mattress topper with your head on a MyPillow, you wake up, you put on your MyPillow robe, put on your MyPillow slippers, you are the king of your castle. And with the code Jones, you get deep discounts on all of those products. So yeah, that's that. That's me selling pillows. But now let's get on with the show. Terry Schilling, welcome to the Jason Jones Show.
Jason, thanks for having me. It's been a long time since Iowa.
Yeah, tell folks about that. Like, it seems like every guest I have on, I know, and they become very prominent. They become leaders, national leaders. I met you in Iowa, and you were a kid.
I was 20 years old, and I'd never worked on a presidential campaign before. And you were my first boss. You were the director, I think, of grassroots operations for the Brown Bag campaign.
Yes.
And you gave me one of the most passionate pro-life calls to action. It was like a motivational speech for getting involved in politics to save unborn babies. I was ready to die for the Brownback for President campaign because I thought it was like the only way we're going to overturn Roe is if Brownback is Sam Brownback, a senator from Kansas, is elected president of the United States. You had that impression of me, and it's always stuck. And so for you to have me on your podcast, I just absolutely love it, because I know that feeling that I had in Iowa when you talked to me about what was at stake, it's a feeling I haven't really felt before that moment. And I know that your listeners that listen to you, they feel that feeling too. And that's a motivated, energized, ready to die for these super important causes, ready to run through brick walls feeling. And so I know you're awesome. I think your audience is probably just as awesome, but that's because you fired them up. And so I'm really honored to be here. You've had a great impression on me and my family, and just really, really happy and lucky to be here.
Well, let me tell you what I remember from the day we first met. So I was fired up because I looked at how many, you were from Steubenville College, and there were, how many interns did we have from Steubenville?
There was probably about a dozen or so from Steubenville. There were like 50 interns.
We had like 50 interns, a dozen from Steubenville. I remember looking out at the room. I remember some of the things I said. I looked out at you, and I remember thinking, and I think I said it, in this room, there's probably a Supreme Court justice. In this room, there's probably a future president of the United States. In this room, there will be the leaders of the pro-family movement. And in this room, most of you aren't those people. Most of you are going to go to live normal lives, and you'll show up and you'll vote. And then look around, because for many of you, your spouse is in this room. And look around, because for many of you, your best friends, people you will fight with till you're the last breath, are in this room. Look around. They're here. Do you remember me saying that?
I totally remember you saying that. And I remember looking around the room and seeing this drop-dead, gorgeous redhead, super Irish, beautiful freckles, and thinking maybe that's...
No, did you really? Did you?
Totally, yes, of course.
Because you met your wife on the campaign, as many people did.
I met my wife, Katie, on that campaign in 2007, right? Like 14 years ago. And I remember having that. And you know what's funny is I just threw it out there. Like I felt head over heels for her. And I just started telling her, like, hey, you and I are going to get married. And she started immediately dismissing it, right? But then eventually I knew I was making progress with all the flirtations and teasings and, making fun of her.
Wait, you guys were flirting when we were trying to run a campaign? This was happening?
You got, those lonely Iowa nights. I mean, it's not a lot to do. But I fell head over heels. I knew I was making progress because she finally stopped rejecting it. And she finally started saying, well, what's your plan? And I knew, like, oh, she's open to this.
Well, let me say this. It's something else I remember about you. So when I looked at all of you, this is how I see myself when I saw everyone there. I am a train wreck, right? Like, I am the coach that's coaching the community college of kids that didn't get into a D1 school because of grades, but I know they're all going to the NFL, right? But they're all from good families, raised with the faith, never made a bad decision in their life. But then there was you. You were a teen father.
Yep, that's right.
And so you were different to me. You were the one I identified with. I said, oh, okay, I like this young man. Okay, he's not like all these perfect Steubenville kids. I've matured since then, and I realize that not every young person from a Catholic family that goes to a Catholic school, his life has been a bed of roses. But at that time, that's really how I thought. Mm-hmm. And I lacked empathy and experience with people with different experiences. So you were the guy that I felt an affinity toward and identified with. And but your wife comes from kind of a good family, established family. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but look, she's from a working class Irish family in Boston. And so her father, my father-in-law, is the youngest of 8 kids, all raised in the Boston projects. They actually grew up in this...
Because she carries herself like... I thought she came from a pillar of society. Pillars of society. I mean,
she
that's how
dressed so well.
Yeah. She looks like a Laura Ashley catalog model.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. And I remember telling my mom,
freckles.
I told my mom, I said, Mom, this girl, she's from Boston, and she's like Jackie O, like a redheaded version of Jackie O.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I'll never forget, going to their house the first time and thinking like, oh, thank goodness they're working class. Like they're not stuck up. They're not elites. So, and they were the most welcoming, loving people I had ever met. So my father-in-law is the youngest of 8, Boston Irish Catholic family, grew up in the projects, same neighborhood as Malcolm X. Same neighborhood.
I'm friends with his daughter, Ilyasa.
he gets a bad rap in a lot.
Oh, he's one of my
ways.
heroes. By the way, one of the shirts I was going to wear today, I'm wearing God is Love in Hawaiian, but I have a Malcolm X shirt that I wear.
He knew what he stood for, and he went for it. But these kids, these Boston Irish kids, were all born to an orphan father. So he didn't know who his mom was. They get married, but they're honest food assistants. They're on all these programs. The eldest went on to become a tenured professor at Boston College, very successful. I believe he had 10 or 12 kids himself. The second, I don't know all the other breakdowns, but there's dentists in this family. There's laborers. They're super smart kids. And then one of them was a successful dentist. He then had, I think, 10 kids. There's one of his eldest, or his second eldest, or his eldest kid went on to become like a billionaire, like developed some of the first stock trading software that America had ever seen. This is in the 80s and 90s, right? Wow. When the internet first came around. But these are poor Catholic working class people who ended up...
But it was the family structure that nurtured them and allowed these pillars of their community to grow.
That's exactly right. They didn't prioritize the material goods. They prioritized the development of their children's education, the development of their skills, and most importantly, their souls. And that was what made all of the difference. The thing about the family is you don't need to be millionaires. You don't even need to be, well off or middle class. You can come from nothing and have a huge impact on the world simply by having a strong, functional family. It's that powerful of an institution. And that's why I think when you start using this institution of the family with how powerful it is, to start making changes to our laws by getting involved in politics. The family is a political institution. It's the first political institution, really, with, you have the two heads and you have the subjects and, the citizens. And it's the most natural political institution, but we haven't been organizing that political institution in politics. And so...
Sure, this neoliberalism dissolves all entities between the person and the state, and the family has been dissolved. But before I get to this, I want to keep it on you a little bit, and here's why. You have a joy and an unaffectedness that's not normal in this city, right? It's not normal. You're unaffected. You're Terry Schilling. But I want to go back to like when I first met you. Going to Steubenville as a teen parent, were you insecure? Like, tell me about, did you have insecurities with your relationship to other students?
A little bit of that. A little bit of that. The biggest thing for me, my mom was great. She really instilled during that time when you're in high school, right? Like, you're super scared. Your girlfriend's pregnant.
Yeah.
You know how mean high school kids are and how bad it's going to be if anyone gets word. So you're just on pins and needles when you're in high school, waiting for someone to find out through the rumor mill, and then your life is destroyed. But that first, it's so stressful, but my mom really instilled prayerful discernment in me during that time. She got me going to adoration. She got me going to daily mass a few times a week. She got me praying the rosary and really asking God to guide me on what I was supposed to do. And it's funny. My the mother of our beautiful daughter Grace, at the time, we both went and met with a trusted priest, and we're trying to discern what we were supposed to do. Because there was just some issues about, you're two teenage kids. You don't really know if marriage is right for you. And look, I think a lot of people think like, oh, you get pregnant and now you got to get married. No, you have to discern if that's the person you're supposed to get married to. And if that's the person you're supposed to get married to, then you do it. And if it's not, then you figure out what's the best thing for the child. Because if you marry the wrong person, God has a lot of different plans for a lot of different people. Everyone's unique. And we met with this priest, and we spent a full day of adoration and prayer and just reflecting. And we decided to give our daughter up for adoption. And it was a very difficult position. It was a decision that, I still reflect on, and I think, that might have been the right decision, but I'm really glad it didn't work out that way. Because, so we decided, we found a family that, they had two boys, but they had always wanted a girl, and they weren't able to have kids for the last 15 years. So we got everything lined up, and then Grace was born, and the mom couldn't do it. the mom couldn't go through with the adoption, and that was okay. And I remember being, a little perturbed by that because, it's not the plan that we decided on. It's not what God told us to do. But I'm so glad it didn't work out that way. And
Praise God. And how old were you?
I was 18 when my girlfriend got pregnant in high school. I was a senior.
And how old's your daughter now?
She's 15. She's going to be 16 in October, which is crazy to think about. She's already driving. She's driving me around.
So what I like about your story is good kids from good families, good kids from good Catholic families. And I love your parents. And I want to talk about your father too, just recently passed, which is just striking to me because he was the most alive, vibrant man I ever met. And so I never saw him. He got cancer and it was pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And so you had a beautiful family. They owned a pizza place, like a great restaurant, right? And your dad was a member of Congress, became a member of Congress. I think the Brownback campaigns would politicize your dad, maybe? I don't know, or was it before then?
No, the Brownback campaign was what made him start to consider actually getting engaged and involved in politics.
Okay.
He was always a conservative. He was, always a Republican. I think he had voted in a few Democratic primaries, but he knew where his values were and he always voted. But the Brownback campaign was what opened his eyes to getting involved in politics. And when he made the decision to eventually run, it was actually the summer of 2008. I was interning for another great Catholic pro-life champion, Christopher Smith from New Jersey. And we got my parents, they came out to visit me in D.C., and we got them a Capitol Hill tour. And as we were walking through the Senate office buildings, my dad's seeing all these people run in and out. And we go to the Capitol, he's seeing everything going on. I'll never forget, he turned to me and he said, I could do this. I could be a member of Congress or a senator. Like, this doesn't seem that hard. You're just reading and analyzing things and talking to people. I could do this. I said, well, yeah, of course you could, because that's how the system was designed. It was designed for people like you to be in politics and be elected as an elected official, not these elitists who don't trust the American people. This is the premise of America. And he goes, that's right. And so he just kept thinking about it. And it wasn't until Barack Obama got elected where, you have this charismatic black guy who, for all intents and purposes, instills a lot of hope in the American people. But when you peel back all of the rhetoric and the campaign mantras, and you look at his agenda and his record on public policy, guy that voted present on the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, a bill that simply says that if a baby comes all the way out of the mother's womb during an abortion attempt, you have to provide medical care and you can't just kill the baby. He voted present for that. So it was such a conflict in America, right? Because he presented that awesome American spirit of hope and entrepreneurship and overcoming adversity. But at the same time, he was a pessimist and thought it was okay to kill babies, thought that mothers couldn't handle it.
Held it up in Illinois. It didn't get through the Illinois legislature until he was elected to Senate.
That's exactly right. And my dad was looking at that aspect of just how radically pro-abortion he is. And he called me, he's talking to me about these, like, dude, we got to save the babies. And he's like, and by the way, I'm kind of pissed. He's talking about spreading the wealth around. And I know he's talking about people like me. He's like, Terry, we haven't taken a vacation in probably 20 years. But this guy wants to start taking more of our money. Like, we've got to do something. So he says, I'm running against Phil Hare for Congress. And that name probably might sound familiar to some of your listeners, but I'll get to that in a second. But Phil Hare was, that district that my dad ran in was Democratic for the past 28 years. It went Democratic in 1982 and didn't become a Republican district until 2010. But Phil Hare was this just curmudgeon-y, pro-abortion Catholic who spoke on both sides of the aisle, or on both sides of the issue. But, when it came time to vote, he was voting for taxpayer funding. He was voting for partial birth abortion, all of that. So my dad decided to run. I told him he was crazy, but he said, look, you're the only guy that I know that's actually been involved in politics and run campaigns and worked on them. I need you to run my campaign. Excuse me. Sorry. I need some
No.
some water maybe. So he decides to run. I tell him he's crazy, but I still go out and do it. And it was tough. And I remember thinking about all the stuff that needed to get done. Like, how do I get my dad on the ballot? How do we file the FEC reports? How do we do all of this stuff? It just seems so daunting and overwhelming. But as I discovered, as I walked through the process, our political system's actually pretty simple to figure out. Every state has a state board of elections that set the rules for how to get on the ballot. They explain it very clearly, all the rules that's out there. But I thought, most families, when they look at the political system, it seems very complicated. It seems daunting. It seems overwhelming. But it's not. It's very simple. It's very straightforward, and it's easy. And I think that we need to get more families involved and engaged in politics from that experience.
Yeah, well, that's not that long ago. 2008, the Brownback campaign wasn't that long ago. And look at what has happened since your family got involved. Your dad was a member of Congress. You are now the president of a very influential organization in Washington, D.C. And like you said, it seems so complicated, but it can't be. Look at AOC, okay? Look, she's there. Now, look, we all don't have Soros-funded machines to come pick us up, put us in the back seat, and drive us into Washington. But it's not that challenging. I felt the same way when I got involved in the movie business. When people say, oh, you need to make this movie, I'm like, no, you need to make this movie. Well, I could never make a movie. Well, sure as heck you can. If you ran a pizza place, you could sure as heck make a movie. It's as hard and as simple as that. Nothing. It's not rocket science. Making movies is not rocket science. Running for Congress isn't rocket science. I've come to find out everything that seems hard really isn't once you figure it out. That even rocket science probably isn't that rocket science. If I set out to send a rocket to Mars, it'd be like, this isn't that challenging.
It's just math, really.
It's just math. I never passed a math class in my life, but I'll hire a guy that did, and we'll figure this out. Right? So, yeah, your family's done so much as a family. So here you were, a young kid, 18. You had a teen pregnancy, became a father. Our culture would say your dreams are over. Your high school girlfriend's dreams are over. Gone. That's not true. Your lives continue and you flourish. And here you are now, American Principles Project, and you are launching this new campaign, really the first of its kind. And I just watched the ad with you and your beautiful Laura Ashley. That's your wife. And when people see the ad, that is his real wife. Those are his real kids. That is not. Don't tell. If that is your real house, I need to know.
Just the outside of the house.
So the outside is the house.
Yeah, so everything inside. Our house is actually kind of not cluttered, but it's smaller.
Well, you have a lot of kids.
We have a ton of kids, yeah. So we actually rented an Airbnb for all the inside shots, but everything outside, that
good, because as a guy with a lot of kids, I'm like, if that's what the inside of their house looks like, we're failing.
That's been the one critique that I have.
But I like it. No, you know what? It is what it is, right? You can't. It's not. It's a production.
Right.
But it's beautiful. It's powerful. And I said, this is going to be the Chip and Joanna Gaines of the pro-family movement. So tell us about your new campaign, what motivated you to launch this new campaign, and then how people can be involved. It's Father's Day. And I don't know I don't know if this is how you see politics, but let me tell you how I see politics. When I was a little boy, my mom had me in high school when she was in high school. My dad floundered around, worked at factories, did what he could. They were married at like 16. My mom was like 16, 17. They were married for 6 months. Then they got divorced. My dad literally worked in factories and on the railroad. Then he joined the Army. Didn't see him for many years. My mom got remarried. My daydream as a child, I would daydream about being a father, about having a wife, about having children, about having a peaceful home with board games, a pull-up bar, a heavy bag, books. I'd bring flowers home. The refrigerator would be filled with food. There'd be ice cream bars in the freezer. This is what I would daydream about. So then when I get involved in this teen pregnancy, it wasn't jarring to me. It was like, now I get to live what I've been dreaming my whole life. And then my first child is destroyed brutally through a third trimester abortion. So I felt like a horrible failure. Everything that animates my work, whether it's making a movie like Bella, which is obviously its connection to fatherhood and family, or my work in East Turkestan, which is thinking about fathers being separated from their children, or the drone war in Yemen, fathers losing their children to drone strikes. Everything I do, I see through the lens of being a father. And when I look at the work of American Principles Project and your new campaign, is that what how you see the world? Is just
That's exactly right. Everything about my life is about me as a father. And I think when I look at my generation, these younger kids that are 40 and under, I think they have it exactly backwards. They want to prioritize their careers, and they put their careers first. They put their advanced degrees first. And then they say, well, once I get my career off the ground, once I get my master's in business, then I can get married. Then I can start having kids. That is backwards. The whole point of having a career, having a job, getting a degree is so that you can better support your family. That's it. And when I go to work every day, and I'm really blessed, right? Because I have a job where not only do I get paid to provide, and I'm able to provide resources for my kids and their food and their education and clothing, all that, but I have a job where I'm trying to make the future better for my kids. Everything about what I do, whether it's my job or what I'm doing when I get home, it's about my kids and my wife. They're the best thing that ever happened to me. And you work in DC long enough and you realize that is very rare here. Most people prioritize their careers here. They're
out every night late. It startles me.
Drinking. I mean,
out meetings in New York is the same way. And you're like, what? How do they weather this? I know my family's 20-minute drive away or a metro drive away, I'm not going to have a drink with you. I'm sorry. Now, when I'm in this town, I work till 6 a.m. I'm here to work. Mm-hmm. But if my family is a 20-minute drive away or a metro ride away, I'm not going out for drinks with you.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And one thing I want to point out, because we just talked about, how in DC there's a lot of alcoholism. This is the most alcoholic part of the country. And it's just, when you think about, there's so much stress, there's so few families. DC has the highest rates for alcoholism. But I look at what the family did for my dad. So my dad didn't have the best upbringing. Both of his parents worked full time. They both worked late night jobs. So the kids in his family basically raised themselves. So it was a little bit of like Animal House. My dad gets to his senior year in high school and his parents get divorced. And it really had a negative effect on him his entire life. My dad, but even before that, there was a lot of dysfunction. Like my dad would tell us, like, yeah, I started smoking cigarettes at around 9. He's like, this is back in the age where all I had to do was come up with a handwritten note that was half decently written and give it to the store clerk for a pack of,
My stepdad would write me notes in crayon. He was an alcoholic, the best man ever. But he couldn't find anything to write on. He would give me a note in crayon. It'd be 9:30 p.m. I'd be 7 years old walking half a mile to the Shell station. I would hand them an authentic note written in crayon, and they would hand me a pack of cigarettes.
It was just a different era.
well, our paint wasn't lead, so it really didn't matter. Smoke, it'll help dilute the lead in your blood.
So he starts smoking cigs at 9, starts smoking weed at 12, has been drinking this whole time. And so his parents get divorced as senior in high school, and he starts to rebel. He starts having parties at his house all the time. He actually developed the nickname CBS, Cool Bobby Schilling, because he threw the best parties. He was homecoming king, so he lived it up. He really loved interacting with people. He was a total extrovert. But then a few years later, he tried community college out for a semester, and it just wasn't for him. So he went into the workforce. He actually spent 14 years in unions. He worked at a corrugated box factory, was a union steward there, then went on to work in the financial services industry for Prudential, and was part of the UFCW, United Food and Commercial Workers Union. And so he had that working class background, but he meets my mom when he's 21, and they fell in love. They end up getting engaged, but they almost broke up on Halloween. And I found this out. My mom, 2 Halloweens ago, my mom sends me a text message, tells me this long, drawn-out story about how she and my dad got into a major fight on Halloween in 1985. And I'm like, where is this going? And she's going into the details, like he rolled up in his Mustang and was burning out, and he slammed the car door because he saw me flirting with another guy. And it was so embarrassing for him because when he slammed the car door, the window shattered. And it
I
really
would be embarrassed. I'd be like, yeah.
So they get into a big fight. The other guy scurries off and they fight, but then they end up making out. And she goes, and Terry, 9 months later, you were born. And I just thought, oh my
Hey,
goodness.
Mom,
She said,
if
happy
you're
conception
listening,
day.
you should have shared that. I don't know if you should have shared that story.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's
I don't
good.
know. I don't know.
We need more
Conceptions.
reality.
No, that is true. That's true.
So then they end up getting engaged, getting married. I was obviously at the wedding. I don't remember it. I was still in the womb, but heard it was great. But my dad still has these underlying issues, right, of alcoholism, and he actually developed a serious drug addiction. He wasn't just addicted to the white collar drugs. He was addicted to the West End of Rock Island drugs. He was hooked on crack cocaine, and my mom kept trying to get him in line. They end up having 3 kids. She gets pregnant with number 4. And it just hit like fever pitch. And I don't know why, but it got so bad that year when she was pregnant with 4. Probably, maybe it was due to the stress of having your 4th kid in 6 years, right? So my mom actually files for divorce because she just can't take it anymore. He's out all night doing drugs, drinking, never around, doesn't know if he's screwing around, all that. Files for divorce, and he just kind of recedes. And my mom got a call, and this goes back to family too, right?
How old were you now?
This is 1993, so I'm 7.
Okay.
I'm still a little kid.
Do you remember it? You remember seeing your dad vanishing, or?
I remember my dad being out for a few weeks, very vaguely, but I do remember being even littler, and my mom putting us in the car really late at night, going around looking for him at the different bars. And so anyway, my mom files for divorce, doesn't really hear anything from my dad. She gets a call from his mother, her mother-in-law. And my grandma Pat says to my mom, "Are you planning on divorcing my son?" Real confrontational, because she, in her heart, she does not want the same outcome for her grandkids that her kids had to go through.
Right.
And my mom says, "I don't know what to do, Pat. I don't want to divorce him, but he's not fighting me. He hasn't told me that he doesn't want me to divorce him and leave him. So I don't know what to do. He's not cleaning up. He doesn't want to stay married. He doesn't want to be married to me." And my grandma Pat said, "I'll take care of it." And got off the phone.
Family.
Yeah, family.
Roadblocks. This is why it's so important. If your grandmother wasn't there, your life would be a lot different. And your children's life would be a lot different.
And you know what, to be honest, maybe if they hadn't gotten divorced and she didn't have that pain from that, maybe you don't know how all this stuff affects things,
That's right.
But my grandma Pat goes to my dad and says, "I never would have divorced your father if he asked me not to." If you think about that, that is such a powerful statement. And that changed my dad for the rest of his life. He called my mom immediately, said, "I don't want you to divorce me. Let's work this out. I'll get clean. I'll stop drinking." Back in the 80s and 90s and just, families of alcoholics, we come from a long line of alcoholics. Being an alcoholic and drinking is just what you do.
And people didn't know what crack was. I mean, I remember in that same year, it was 85 when your dad started crack. It was 84, 85. There was a liquor store in our neighborhood called Nate's Liquors in Harvey. And you could be 14. I'd go in my Letterman's jacket and buy peppermint schnapps. Really. And I walked out there, and I had never heard of crack, but I had never smoked a cigarette. Actually, to this day, I've never smoked a cigarette. But if I smoked pot, that day I would have smoked crack, because this is what happened. This guy said, "Hey, y'all, you want some rock?" And I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Man, it's just like weed. It's awesome, but it's like weed, but it's awesome. It's better." And I'm like, "Nah, I don't smoke weed. I'm just here to get some schnapps," because we're kids. We would buy peppermint schnapps, right? And then it unfolded what is rock, crack cocaine. people didn't know. I have friends in the entertainment business that in the 70s, they thought cocaine was kind of good for you. They were like, we didn't think it was that bad, you know? And so people were ambushed.
Yes.
They were ambushed by these drugs. And by the time they realized what was going on, the hooks were deep.
Well, and the likelihood of people that are addicted to crack getting clean, the rates of failure are through the roof. And he overcame all that. And obviously God was involved in this, right? Like he would say that God was involved in this. But at the end of the day, it was our family that got him to open his eyes and return back to God. It was his empathy of not wanting his 4 boys to go through what he went through as a kid. And he wanted to stop the cycle of dysfunction. That was such an important moment. It was the inflection point of his life where he decided that he was no longer going to be cool Bobby Schilling first. He was still cool. He was going to be Bobby Schilling, son of God. And he was going to dedicate his life
consciously. That's what he said to himself.
I don't know if he ever said that, but that's your
interpretation. That's what happened.
Yeah. And so here's the really cool thing, right? My mom was pregnant with number 4. They get divorced. Guess what? Done. Schilling family, done. 4 boys. That's it. My parents.
Your dad would have died.
He would have died. Overdosed.
Died. Your mom would have probably never been married, or the man would have, it's generally pretty hard.
Well, but think about it, because he had advanced cancer. So even if he didn't die of a drug overdose, when they got the cancer, when the diagnosis with him, he was stage 4. It was terminal. He would have died alone.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that point in a second, but my parents went on to have 6 more kids. 6 more kids.
After that. Can I ask, were you guys going to mass during the crack addiction and all of that?
Yeah, my mom was devout.
Would your dad go with you?
Yeah, he would go with us. He never, he understood the importance of going to church. But, when you develop addictions, you start.
No, but there's a grace that still comes from that. And that's why it's beautiful.
True. No, that's exactly right. So they ended up having 6 more kids. Number 5 was the first girl. That's special in and of itself, right? For a family. She has 4 kids herself. Like what I tell people, what's so amazing about children and family and having babies is that those babies you have are going to be someone's spouse. They're going to be someone's best friend. They're going to be someone's teacher, someone's boss, someone's worker who puts something together. These kids and these people impact the world in immeasurable ways. And the devil knows that, right? And that's why he loves abortion.
You erase a child, you erase a line.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
If you'd erased Genghis Khan, 1/4 of the world would be gone. True story. But that's right. One guy, 1/4 of the world, I'm told, is descended from Genghis Khan. So so when did you come to understand all of that what your family was going through? Did they shelter you from it, or? No,
it's funny. I always knew about it. They didn't shelter it from me. I was actually like, because there were a few moments where he relapsed, right? And anytime you're trying to get.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I hate are the faux conversion stories.
Oh my gosh!
Like, I found Jesus and everything was great. No, you cheated on your wife a few more times, didn't you? Did some drugs.
Yep.
Your business failed. Like,
yeah.
We relapsed. These are battles to the end.
Exactly.
Battles to the end.
And it can go either way haunted. Any day if you give in. And
here, look, I was looking at you guys back in Iowa thinking I'm with a bunch of like Puritans, like everyone here is from perfect families, would have never imagined. And I'm sure that every one of those interns had a story.
I'm sure.
To me, they were all raised by Scott and Kimberly Hahn, in a nice suburban home, and they went to adoration mass, and they only committed venial sins in that family. There were no drug addictions. That's kind of how naive I think a lot of converts, we have that.
I think that's right.
And we got to get over that.
Yeah.
We got to recognize the world is a hard place.
Very hard.
And it's hard for those of us in the church, out of the church, straddling the church. It's just a tough place.
So, he changed his life there, and he ends up, this is what's really cool about people with addictions or addictive personalities, is that those are the people that end up like really doing big things. because they're always looking for some other challenge. They're looking to keep busy. They're just looking and working. So my dad was a successful insurance agent at the time, was making a ton of money, and he sees his little brother Billy, start a really successful pizza restaurant. He sees how much money he's bringing in. My dad thinks to himself, oh, I can just open up a pizza place and get it under management and then make even more. And then we can open and get another pizza place. So he does that. But what happens is the managers he hired start stealing from him, and he starts to end up losing money. So he leaves the insurance industry and just jumps head first into the pizza business, and got all of us there working. I mean, I as a 10-year-old, I'm there cleaning dishes and sweeping the floors and doing all that. But he made all of us work at the pizza place. And you fast forward to today, we're opening up our 4th pizza store. And here's something else that's cool.
By the way, I met a flight attendant from your town. Do you remember this story?
Moline?
Yeah, remember? No, I texted you if you knew her. She knew your family. She was friends with your family. She was a flight attendant.
Yes. No, I know exactly who you're talking about.
She said she's from Moline. I'm like, hey, do you know? And then I forget the name of the pizza place. She said the name of the pizza place. She goes, oh, I'm friends. It's my friends. Those are my family friends.
Yep. So the pizza place is called St. Giuseppe's Heavenly Pizza.
How did I forget that?
Which is Joseph.
One of the biggest fans of the show is Giuseppe Locatelli from Las Vegas, Nevada. So shout out to Giuseppe.
But my parents made a real dedication to St. Joseph because he was the foster father of Jesus, obviously the model of fatherhood, model for workers. And it impacted all of our lives. Like my dad really wanted to strive to be St. Joseph for us. And you fast forward all the way. My dad gets elected to Congress. He has 6 more kids, a total of 10. This year, we're going to have 17 grandkids. He then goes on to start doing foreign business, in China and India, like all over the place, right? And he has this amazing life, opens up his 4th pizza place, gets diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer in his stomach and colon last April. And at first it had a real chilling effect. When you go through this stuff, you don't you hear about people getting cancer and you just think like, oh, that's so bad. It's so terrible. But then your dad gets cancer at 56 and you're like, what the hell? You start to kind of get angry at God. Like, what? Like, we went through all of this. You got clean from drugs. Like, we went through all the struggle, and you're taking him from us at the height of his life. At the height,
we're still in Act. Though I think of film. We're still in Act 2.
We're still in Act 2.
We're still in Act 2. We're not to Act 3 yet.
Yeah.
Hold on, slow down.
And I remember being really mad, but then, it's funny because he wanted to protect us from all of it. And he, when I called him, we started hearing these rumors. Like, my mom's texting me like, "Hey, things are really bad with your dad. We think he has cancer. We don't know all the details, but it's really not good." And so I remember calling him. He's in the hospital. I'm like, "Dad, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh, it's fine, man. Like, it's treatable. That their doctors are really optimistic." And I'm like, oh, I kind of freaked out about nothing. I talked to my mom. She's like, "No, Terry. Like, I don't know if he's just not hearing the doctors or if he's just doesn't want you to be afraid or what, but it's really bad. It's stage 4. It's spread." And sorry. The thing is like, even once he came to telling us the truth, one, he never told us how bad it actually was. He said, they gave him 2 to 3 months last April. And he told us, he goes, "Look, the doctors tell me it could be a year." And so I'm like, okay, I got a year with him, and I find out after, he did end up living another year. And I remember finding out, like, my mom told me, like, no, they gave him 2 to 3 months. Like, he could have been gone very quickly. He always had this confidence, and it was like a grace, a special blessing from God, to where I remember being in the hospital with him when he first got diagnosed, and they're doing an operation, like colon cancer. He had a weird form of colon cancer where it was, the whole reason he went in to get checked out was because his digestive system wasn't working. He was throwing up food. He wasn't able to process it. Mm-hmm. And so he had to get these surgeries so that he could at least start eating food again. And and getting some nutrients in his body. So we're in the hospital. He's waiting for his next big surgery. And the doctor comes in and says, all right, before the surgery, you got to sign all this paperwork. And by the way, what do you want to do about a DNR? Do not resuscitate. And my dad said, I've thought a lot about it. And, I'm okay. We can do the DNR. If God wants to take me, it's in his hands and I'm okay with it. And my mom and I just looked at each other like, what? This is the first we're hearing that you want a DNR. Like, you got 10 kids. Maybe this is a conversation we should have before you just sign a DNR. And he said, no, you guys don't understand. God's been very good to Bobby Schilling, and I've lived the life of 2 men, and I'm okay. And you guys are going to be okay. You got 10 kids. Everything's going to be fine. Just trust in God, and everything's going to be fine. But I don't want my life artificially prolonged. It's okay. I don't want to be in pain, but I also, if they got me on respirators, I don't want to be artificially kept alive. I want to go meet Jesus. I want to I don't want you guys to suffer any more than you have to. And it hit me he really is at peace. He's in a state of grace. He was okay with going to meet God. And that confidence that he showed throughout the entire treatment was incredible. And he, something that really stung, and I'm still not quite over it, is, the treatment started going really well. As you're getting chemo and you're getting radiation treatments, they're monitoring the amount of cancer cells that you have in your blood. And when he first got his chemo, his body kind of had a weird reaction. His cancer levels went up to over 500, which is really bad. But then he started getting treatments, and then it dropped over the next 4 or 5 treatments. It dropped from over 500 to last Christmas, right? 4 months before he died. Last Christmas, it was at 67. And I went to the doctor's appointment with him, and the doctor said, we've never seen something like this. And what I'm still not quite over with, and I'm not mad at God or anything, just thought it was kind of cruel, is here's a guy that had overcome a lot of stuff, overcome a drug addiction, overcame a failing marriage, ran for Congress, won. He pulled off all of these incredible, miraculous feats. And he starts to see this progress in his cancer treatments, where it's oh my God, am I going to be healed? Am I going to pull this out?
So your dad thought
he totally thought. No, I mean, yeah. I had kind of just, left it up to God. I was praying for a miracle the whole time, and I knew it was possible, but every time I was praying, I was just do the best thing for our family. And, there was the moment when we all kind of knew that it was over, and his fight was, the numbers started going back up, and he was in line for this experimental treatment, and they ended up denying him it because he just wasn't a good candidate. And he wasn't, to be fair. We aren't mad that he didn't get the experimental treatment, because he wasn't the right guy for it. But I just felt at that moment you totally misled him, God. He thought he was going to pull off a miracle because you got him through all this other stuff, and you didn't. But then
I think that's where we as Catholics have to, and as Christians generally, there's God's permissive will and active will. And those numbers were probably just science, the doctors, and your dad's serenity and peace. And it wasn't God's active will. God was, taking you on a roller coaster ride. We have to acknowledge that God permits the causes of sin and original sin and actual sin that cascade to us down centuries in the history of the human family. And that, that's what, that when it's someone else, I can look and say, well, this isn't God's active will. But when it's you, you're like, God, you could will a miracle here, and you do it.
Yep.
Why not now?
Right.
When we see the neighbor girl die of leukemia, we don't throw a fit, right? But when it's our daughter, we yell, but God, why not? That's the great. I study every book I can on the problem of pain, any book ever written on the theology of the problem of human suffering and pain, because I think that's what will shake my faith. If something happened to my child,
Yes.
And so I want to be prepared. And I already worked myself through it. I accept it when it happens to other people's children, but it is hard, right? It
really
forces you to ponder the whole economy of the cosmos and God and man and our relationship to God.
But here's where it gets beautiful.
Okay.
My dad died on April 6th. He had last rites, and it's funny because he started, like, the last 2 days, there was a huge shift in his ability to walk, his ability to get up and down, it was just, so he has last rites, he has Holy Communion, he has what's called an apostolic pardon, which basically means, like, as long as you don't make any deliberate mortal sins or anything, you're going to heaven. And it starts to get bad, and it's clear that he's taken his last, he's in his last moments. And all 10 kids, by the way, are home. And we're all praying a Divine Mercy chaplet. And we finish that, and we all just start thanking God out loud for him. And I don't know, Jason, if you've ever been around someone when they're taking their last breaths, but it's an experience. It's when someone's dying, you know what it's like to be in the room when a baby's born. It's very similar to that, except the opposite. It's a sacred moment. It's quiet. You can, at least in this situation, we felt the Holy Spirit, and there was a sense of calm and peace. But we finished the Divine Mercy chaplet, and we all just start thanking God out loud for my dad. So as he's taking his last breaths, he just had communion, he just had last rites, we just finished praying a Divine Mercy chaplet. The last things he's hearing as he dies are his children thanking God for him. And, as I'm writing the eulogy for his funeral, it hit me like we dedicated, I have a little prayer card that I keep in my wallet from Father Arnie Panula's funeral from the CIC. And it's a prayer to Saint Joseph, the patron saint of a happy death. And it hit me. Our family was dedicated to Saint Joseph. And Saint Joseph and God granted my dad the grace of a happy death. The teaching is simple. It's Saint Joseph was the first person to die in the arms of Jesus and our Blessed Mother. And I tell people, my dad died surrounded by all 10 of his kids, praying with him and thanking God out loud for him. That's not St. Joseph's happy death, but that's as close as you're going to get.
No, I mean, as a father, could you imagine? There's no more beautiful way to die. Nothing more imaginable. It's the best.
But you think there's all these different options there's all these different routes they could have taken, right? Like, he could have not gotten clean. He could have still got divorced. He could have, developed an affair. He could have, had the restaurants fail, stopped taking care of them. He could have stopped having children, right? Like, as fathers, I think it gets discounted, like our role in the family. We're the fun ones. I know my wife's going to hate me saying that, but I think she would admit that.
Everyone, let's just acknowledge that we're the fun ones.
We're the fun ones, but we're the ones driving the procreation.
We get to play good cop.
Yes, exactly.
Or really bad cop.
Yeah. Or really bad
either
cop.
Like the good cop or the really bad cop.
But we're the dads in the family. If we want more kids, there will probably be a few more kids.
Yeah.
But if the dad doesn't want any more kids, there's not going to be any more kids. Because women complement men, right? Like, especially when you're younger in your marriage, like, your sex drive is just like through the ceiling. So you're just, at least with me, I have 5 kids now.
Stop bragging.
I want 5 more,
Right, yeah.
And, but your wife, your spouse, is the throttle, Like she's the restrictor plate.
She's like homeschooling, laundry, dishes.
She's tired, right?
Yeah.
And so, but if we're pushing that along, so my dad could have said like, "Hey, Christy, we just had number 5. Like, that's good." But he didn't say that. They had a very simple mentality, and I tell everyone that you need to have this mentality when it comes to having kids and having a family. We're gonna have as many kids as God gives us. If it's 1, we'll take it. If it's 0, we'll take it. If it's 100, we'll take it. But God is in charge of when we live and when we die. And we're going to let him make those decisions in our lives. And because they had that mentality of God being in charge of new babies, they had 10 kids. My mom, even though she lost her husband at 57, has 10 kids to help her out financially. 10 kids to help her walk through this process. 10 kids to help keep the house up. 10 kids to help with anything she needs. 10 helping hands. People underappreciate the value of children and large families. They, children in family size, it used to be, oh, you have 10 kids. Oh my gosh, you are wealthy. You are prosperous. You have a
This is
ton of
why
helpers.
I like going to Africa in the Middle East. When I judge a culture by their response to the question, how many kids do you have? And if they smile and say, you're rich, brother, you're African. Are you from Africa? You are like one of us. I'm like, this is my culture. If they're like, look like they sucked down a prune and go, I'm in the wrong suburb. I got to go.
Yeah.
I got to go to the wrong affluent suburb. I got to go. So yeah, no, you were rich. Well, you had this experience. I remember being a teen dad, walking with my kids, and people looking at me with my child with pity in their eyes. Do you remember that look?
Oh, I get that now because I've got 5, right? And
right.
When we go to in a restaurant or whatever, people are like, "Oh gosh," like you get the dirty looks, you get the sympathy looks.
Yeah, like, oh, this poor soul, and you're like, "Are you serious?
Yeah.
You're pitying me?
I'm having a blast,
you lunatic!
Yeah,
like you should envy me. All right, you should be addled with envy.
Right.
Yeah, it's like what makes us happy we run from. What we're told to flee what brings us joy, and that's the sorrow. So I always look like I think of everything as a movie. So whenever you see somebody driven, they experienced some profound act. In Act 1 is that inciting incident, the call to adventure, and so your family had these inciting incidents that really taught you. After the Brownback campaign, you could have went in many different directions in politics or in the nonprofit world, but you were driven to protect the family, which, by the way, isn't just mom, dad, kids. It's mom, dad, kids, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews. So even if you never have children, I get so upset when people are like, oh, I never had a family. Really? How is that? Were you shot here from like
created a lab?
Krypton? Yeah, like, are you Kal-El? No, you have a family. You're an aunt, you're an uncle, you're a cousin, you're a niece, you're a nephew. Plug into your family, live in your family, thrive in your family. This is what drives you.
Exactly. And I'm the eldest of 10. I have 5 of my own. And we kind of developed this later in just the last few years, this concept of being the NRA for families. And what we mean by that is an organization that's organizing families in politics to protect and save the American family. And it hit me just the past few days with this big family launch. Our membership program launch is, I'm the perfect guy for this. It's like God's been preparing me. Like, not only am I the eldest of 10 kids, and did I experience what I did with my dad and how the family was what brought him back to God and saved his soul, and had an impact on all of us, but the family is how America will end up being saved if it does get saved. So that this is, and you look at the Fatima prophecies, and Our Lady of Fatima told those 3 little kids that the last battle will be over the family.
So for people who aren't Catholic, let's weird them out. Tell them about Fatima.
Oh, Fatima is incredible. So there were these 3 little poor kids in Fatima, Portugal, and they're literally farmer kids. And they're out, tending sheep and playing. And all of a sudden, the Blessed Mother.
Well, they were praying the rosary, but they were shortchanging it.
Oh, that's
their
right.
moms would go pray the rosary, and so they wouldn't say the whole Hail Mary, right? They would they started editing prayers to get through it quickly.
What kids do.
So maybe
right?
if I start editing my prayers, Our Lady will appear to me. Okay, so Our Lady appears to these 3 kids.
And she appears to them through a series of months and weeks and reveals things to them about what's about to transpire over the world. And she predicts great famine. She predicts great wars and,
predicts a miracle that was documented in newspapers and the sun dancing in the sky and the rain and the...
And it was actually
Communist
documented.
Party newspapers wrote about that was weird what just happened.
Well, and that's one thing that I don't think a lot of people appreciate is that this is during a time when the communists were besieging everything. I mean, there are communist revolutions all over, and they are persecuting the practicing Christians in the world. And so these little kids,
as they are today in China, where one of our bishops was just arrested and sent off to a gulag to be
we need to keep him in our
tortured
prayers.
with his seminarians and priests. Yes.
So Mary makes a series of predictions. These kids aren't believed. They actually are told that they're seeing the devil. And so they set up a big event and they invite everyone out and they have journalists there, atheist journalists. They're wanting to prove this wrong. And it starts raining and pouring. And then all of a sudden the sun comes out, starts dancing around the sky. And this is seen by hundreds of people.
Thousands.
Thousands of people. I'm sorry. Thousands of people. And it's documented by people that aren't on our team, right? Like people that don't like Christians. These are communist journalists who want to disprove all of this. And they document it all. And the sun shone so hot that day that it dried up all the rain that had just been pouring down like crazy. And so in one of these prophecies from Our Lady in Fatima, she predicted that the world was going to go totally nuts and that everything was going to fall. All of our institutions were going to fall. But the last battle that we were going to go through was the family. And so I view where I am right now is as a big challenge. If it really is the family as the last major attack, it can't be any clearer that the family is so much, it's been destroyed, at least here in America. I'm not really a global person, so I don't know what the state of the family is the rest of the world. But in America, you have we don't even have a divorce problem anymore. We have a marriage problem. No one's getting married, and even when they do get married,
do you know this guy Kevin Samuels?
I don't.
Oh, he's this YouTuber. It's really interesting. I want to have him on the show because he's very controversial, but I think he's actually very loving, and he gives dating advice to black women, and he can be seen as very mean, but I think he's driven by love because he tells hard truths and a very, he's very interesting, very entertaining guy. But he had said only 1 in 5 black women will get married right now. And, I think for many millennials, maybe marriage is not in the cards. All of us, I think the one thing we all share in common, all of us are from families that have been decimated. Mm-hmm. And all of us have not been formed to be good fathers and mothers. And all of us are tripping on our face constantly, right? I mean, I am. If it wasn't for my wife, we would have been divorced 20 times over. Early on in our marriage, she said to me, no matter what you do, I'm never granting you a divorce. And my mother was divorced a lot, To me, marriage was not even forever. In fact, I knew one day I will bring shame and scandal. It's like I was an atheist pro-lifer. I could do whatever I want, and it brings no embarrassment to anyone because that was part of my brand. I'm the guy, that guy. When I became a Catholic, I'm like, oh no, now I'm accountable for my actions. Well, and then when I didn't want to get married because I knew I would inevitably get divorced. Marriage wasn't forever. And my wife, just me relentlessly trying to sabotage our marriage early on, she said, I'm never going to divorce you. Ever. So, and that gave me such peace.
Yep.
But I think that's all of us, right? Did you ever, your parents never got divorced. Have you felt like, what fears have you had as a father?
My fears have always been not being able to provide for my kids or having their innocence stolen from them, right? Like, the first time as a kid that I ever saw like porn, like I'm not talking just like boobs and butts. I was 11 years old, and you think about, I hadn't even hit puberty at that point.
That's startling to me.
But that is, first of all, that was my generation. I wasn't alone. A lot of kids.
Yeah, when I was 11, all I had was the Sears catalog, my friend.
Yeah, no, I know. It's really bad. But you fast forward to today, any kid with a smartphone or a tablet None of these porn sites have age verification or age restrictions. None of them.
Let me tell you how bad it is. If you have kids listening, press pause. I'm going to share a horrible story with you. So again, if you have kids listening, press pause. You might know about this, Terry. A young woman, Tiana, who works for me, I'd asked her, when was the first time she saw porn? She's like, I don't think I saw porn until I was a freshman. I'm like, well, that's amazing. You went to public school? She goes, no, but we saw something worse all the time in middle school. Like, well, what possibly could be worse than porn? Again, if you have children listening, press pause. There was some app or some site that children could go to watch grown men masturbate. Have you heard of this?
It's called...
And don't even say it. I don't even want to give...
Yeah.
But people, she said, oh, no, in middle school, that's what everyone was watching their phone in recess. Kids in middle school. Now, I guarantee you no one listening to this has even heard of this. I never heard of this. Have you heard of this? You know what it's called. You even said you know what it's called.
Yeah, no, I had heard of it. So it was taken over by those guys, but it was probably invented for this purpose. But like what kids would do is it would connect you. You'd hit refresh and it would connect you with a new, totally random person.
Adult.
Well, there were a lot of kids on there though too. There were a lot of little kids on there.
But kids would be watching adults masturbate.
Yep.
In the middle school yard.
Yeah, no, it's horrifying. And the thing is like in my generation, I don't know how you would never be able to get an actual number on this. But think about for my generation and this current generation, how many kids lose their virginity to themselves and not another person, right?
Yeah.
Not even their future spouse. So the ideal is you lose your virginity to your future spouse. And one thing I just want to say, this big family membership program that we're launching, this NRA for families, it's going to be raw. It's going to
Let's tell people right now, first of all, there's a code Jones because you're going to give people a discount.
Oh yeah, 10% off with the promo code Jones.
Is it tax deductible?
This is a C4 effort.
Oh, awesome. That's even better. I'm glad this is a C4. So there is no tax deduction.
No tax deduction.
But you become a member.
Yep. You become a member and you're going to get access. We're producing a groundbreaking report called Threats to the American Family.
Okay.
We're only providing that to
What's the
members.
website?
It's savethefamily.app.
So savethefamily.app is going to be your go-to political action. It's a PAC or C4?
It's a C4, but we do have a political, a
You will
super
have a
PAC.
Okay.
We already have it, and we're going to use that in the midterms. But right now, we're just asking people to join.
Okay, so one more time.
Savethefamily.app.
I'm going to join this. Savethefamily.app. You become a member with the code Jones. Whatever amount, you can get a higher membership.
Yeah, we asked people, with a donation of $25, you get access to this Threats to the American Family report. We're going to make sure that you know all the major threats to your family and what to be looking out for, who the bad guys are, who the bad elected officials are, who the bad companies are that you should not be supporting. All of the bad thing, this critical race, we're going to let you know about all the threats to your family, and no one else is going to have it besides our members. And
all the people pushing this crap, critical race theory, LGBT ideology, these are broken people going on to break things.
Exactly.
These are people from broken families who are looking for identity, who are looking for community, and they're shattering things. They're just out of control, but they're victims of the broken family.
Right.
They're the broken people who are breaking things, but you're there to say, no, we're going to defend the family.
Well, I've noticed that, the Black Lives Matter movement, right? On their website, they said explicitly that part of their goals was to disrupt the nuclear family. And you ask, what type of crazy person would want to destroy the family?
By the way, in the black community, like Kevin Samuel said, only 1 in 5 black women today are going to get married. More than that are going to have children. Do we think that the patriarchy is the problem in the overbearing father in the home is the problem? I mean, this is it's the lack of patriarchy. Insane. Yeah, there's the biggest, my friend Bobby, Green Beret, really smart guy. He said, there's the biggest privilege in America is two-parent privilege. Two-parent privilege. That's the privilege you want to give your children.
Yep, that's exactly right. So we're going to, the other thing, and this is really cool, and we should have you on at one of these, but we're hosting a series of family meetings, and we're going to hold at least one a month, but probably more than that. It's really just going to be depending on what the urgency is and what the issues are coming up. But we're inviting key conservative leaders, key elected officials. We have our first family meeting coming up this next Monday with Senator Tom Cotton. So not this next Monday, but tomorrow, the 21st of June. And our members are going to be first in the queue for asking questions, helping guide us on the direction of these conversations, but also telling us who they want to hear from next. So this is going to be a member-driven organization.
I'll get you some Hollywood stars that I think that want to speak out and do something that maybe some of my issues are too edgy, but this would be something right up their alley.
Well, and I want to tell you, I'm not opposed to having controversy. I'm not opposed to having offensive people. I'm not opposed even to having people that we disagree with on. I think there's a lot you can learn from civil debates and discussions, and even uncivil debates a lot of times. I think that it's important, though, that we tell the truth and that we talk about the facts and what's actually going on. I think that there's a thing such as like polite pollution, right? Where you don't go to the truth, you skip it, and you just flood the airwaves with just niceties. The family's under siege. Your kids are in their schools. If you're in public schools, they're being taught that America is evil. They're being taught that not only they themselves are racist because they're white, that their parents are racist, that their grandparents, who most likely fought in wars for this country, are evil and imperialists. And on top of that, our kids can't surf the internet.
And by the way, if you're an American, your ancestors are here because they were victims of imperialist wars. Right? They were fleeing they were fleeing wars. They were fleeing oppression.
I'm adding that to my arguments here. I missed that.
I mean, think about it. I mean, come on. If you're Irish, why are you here?
Right, exactly.
Why did your grandma, the imperialist, colonialist, come here? Right. Yeah, she was marching here in an act. No, one of the best movies ever is Brooklyn. Have you seen Brooklyn yet?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
it's a great movie.
That film is so beautiful. Yeah, so this nonsense.
Yes.
This utter nonsense.
We are under siege, though.
Yes.
And we have to be real about it. We have to be graphic about it sometimes. And we have to have real conversations because, I tell people, you want to know what your kids are learning about in sex ed in school? I'll tell you. Because you probably think it's normal. It's not. It's weird. In the 90s, there was a big, debate over whether or not sex ed was proper for public schools. And, the Planned Parenthoods had so much funding, they were able to win that fight. And what was their mentality? Their mentality was, well, kids are going to have sex anyway. We can't stop them. They're not going to do abstinence. So let's teach them how to have sex safely. Without pregnancies, without sexually transmitted disease. You fast forward 30 years to today, that same mentality has been expanded to all different types of very weird stuff. Your kids are learning in public schools, they're learning how to have safe BDSM sessions. That is nuts.
No, my daughter's friend, we homeschool. We homeschool for one reason mainly, to keep me out of prison.
That's right.
We homeschool. Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's a lot better than being behind bars for life.
Yes.
But my 9-year-old said, Dad, this girl in our neighborhood who's 9, her friend, said that she thinks she's trans. What? You're 9. You know me enough to know that when I was 9 years old, and when I tell you this, I'm telling you the truth. I knew what I was going to be. I knew what I was. I was a ninja. I was going to grow up to be a ninja, and that's what I was.
You're going to go to Japan.
I'm a ninja. I mean, I know that now, and I grew up to be my job. No, I knew. I was going to go to Japan, and I was going to be a ninja, and that's what I was thinking about. I'd watch Kung Fu theater and karate movies. How are these kids sitting there? What am I? Who am I? Well, I don't even know.
My question is,
it's insane.
We know it's a lie, right? We know it's a lie because 10% of this latest generation of kids identifies as LGBT, and a bunch of them are trans or non-binary or whatever. The question is, okay, where were all of the trans kids in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s? Because they tell us like, oh, if we don't affirm their new gender, they're at risk of suicide. Well, if you look at the numbers, the teenage and adolescent suicide rate has gone up as we've accepted transgenderism. It hasn't gone down. So it's all a lie. Our kids are being inundated nonstop. It's not just the schools, it's Nickelodeon, it's the Disney Channel. And there are people, this is what I really want to stress. This is why this group, the big family, is so important. Everyone's competing for your child's mind. Everyone's competing for your child's soul. And it's time for parents to compete twice as hard for our own kids as Nickelodeon is for our kids' minds, as these teachers unions and these Planned Parenthood organizations and all of that. They want your kid's soul and mind, and they're going to do anything they can. We have to stand up. We have to draw a line in the sand and tell them it goes no further.
I love it. Have you seen this? One of my favorite motivational speeches is of this high school football coach, and he tells a story of a guru, like a kung fu master that tells this young man he's going to train him how to be, as great as him. And he says, but before I train you, you have to meet me at the beach. Have you ever seen this video?
I haven't.
And he says the young man meets the master, the kung fu master at the beach, and he takes him out and he takes him out into the water, and he grabs the young man and he holds him. He just pushes him underwater and keeps him underwater till he's almost ready to drown, and he's fighting for his life, and he pulls him up and he says, until you want to be a success as bad as you just wanted to breathe, don't ever reach out to me again. And we need to fight for our children like that.
Yes.
This is what is at stake. And, our families, our children are being savaged, brutalized. And not just physically, they're lost. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they are. They're never feeling joy, never feeling hope. Sometimes I feel like they don't even feel the temptations of normal sins, like
right,
that have addled the human family since Adam and Eve.
Yep.
They're being dragged into some place that no one has ever been taken before. These are our children. And so I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I hope, guys, I know we went over your time because you have somewhere to be. And I have to be, me, when I travel, I'm going to a boxing gym right now to meet a friend.
Of course.
But, the work you're doing is the most important work on earth. When nothing matters more than our children's peace, our children's happiness, our children's joy. And the people we're fighting aren't our enemies. These are people who are victims too.
Exactly.
These are people who have been shattered. They have been broken. They despair. They're lonely. We live in the world has never been more lonely. People are despairing. I see your family. We see each other on social media, and we're blessed, brother.
We are.
We're rich.
God is good.
Our lives are filled with joy and hope. I haven't been lonely since the day I cut my boy's umbilical cord when I was 18 years old. And it's been a struggle, but it's been a beautiful struggle. Terrence Malick is my favorite director, and in his film To the Wonder, he really looks at the difference between despair and suffering. And you try to avoid suffering, you end up in despair. And we have a world that with family comes challenges,
Yep.
comes disagreements, disputes, comes suffering. Life is either suffering or despair, and there's no way around it. But when your father was dying, you were suffering together. Mm-hmm. But it was a beautiful moment. Your father alone there would have been just nothing but despair.
Right. And that's the one thing I said earlier I was going to get back to. My dad, had he not gotten clean and rededicated himself to our family, he would have gotten that. Even if he didn't die of an overdose, he would have died of that cancer alone.
Or you would have been there with no connection to your dad, out of
Yeah.
some sort of filial duty.
Yeah.
You'd have looked at each other like two strangers.
Yeah. But because he decided to be the man that God made him to be, he had that St. Joseph happy death. It's incredible.
Well, and that's what we want for everyone.
Everyone. And that the family is how we get everyone to get that.
And we all have big families.
Yes.
If you're listening, well, I only have 2 kids. I have no kids. I'm 50. I never got me. You got a big family. You got nieces, you got aunts, you got uncles, you got cousins, you've got nephews. We need to knit the family. The family is a nuclear family is a dying family.
Right.
A nuclear family is what a family looks like on its way to no family.
Right.
Right. We as conservatives in the 80s, look, we have to fight for the nuclear family. There is no such thing as a nuclear family. That's insane.
And I can tell you, only doing the nuclear family route as someone that is a transplant to the DC area that doesn't have any extended family here.
Yeah.
It is so tough. It is so hard. You don't have you have to build your own like little mini network.
Well, you don't
here.
have to live with your family. I mean, you know, they can be all over the world together, right? I've seen this in Hawaii with the Filipino culture. Families are so knit together, even if aunties in Saudi Arabia and my cousins in Jordan and half my family's in Ilocos Norte and I got everyone here in Hawaii. We're still you still have a family, right? And we all have big families. We want bigger families, interconnected families, families that we shelter each other from the storms of the world.
Yep.
And we now have a political voice.
That's right.
Give us the closing words, and then I'm going to sell pillows. And you were texting Mike Lindell right before this interview.
I did because so when you sign up to be a member, there's different levels,
Okay.
and we give you things, and I really want to have. I want to offer our people a My Pillow because here's the thing.
Whoa, brother, you're cutting into my business.
Oh no,
here.
okay, I'm not going to do that. But I was like, Mike, we should.
No, you can offer My Pillow.
But anyway, so look, we need to get families organized and engaged in politics. The Democrats have and the progressive left, they have taken over all of our institutions slowly, but especially politics, from the school boards all the way to the presidency. And we can do this. These progressives aren't actually that smart. They're just more dedicated, and they have a lot more free time. They don't
have diapers to change.
That's exactly
Little
right.
League. Boxing gyms to go to.
But guys, it's not hard. You can do it, and we're going to put you in. We're going to put you to work. So the first 2 years, we're going to spend, building the membership. Go to savethefamily.app, promo code Jones. You'll get 10% off. But listen, don't just sign yourself up. Send it to your family and friends. Send it to anyone you know that is concerned about what's happening to their children.
Because a lot of us don't know what to do. We're like,
right,
and we need to fight local. But we need to fight in Washington, D.C., too.
Everything.
Yeah.
And so we are going to train families not just on how to be organized and who to vote for and what issues are at stake. We're eventually, once we build this right and get to the proper levels, we're going to train families, parents, how to run for office, how to start your own local political chapters, how to get your community engaged and get the bad guys unelected and
The
get
broken guys.
The broken guys.
The broken, lonely
I shouldn't
guys.
say the bad guys.
No, I mean, my heart breaks for them.
It does.
And like you said, they have more free time. Like, I'm about to go kayaking for a week with my boys down the Swanee River. I shouldn't say where I am. They might lurk. They might lurk to ambush us. But what are they going to be doing? They're going to be busybodies working 16-hour days.
Yep, that's right. So we need everyone in. Email it, text it. We're going to put you to work with voter contact, everything political. We are going to train families on how to do. That's what we want to do. That's what we have to do if we want to save America. But first, we have to save the family. So savethefamily.app. There's a really fun video.
I love it. You guys are going to be the Chip and Joanna Gaines of the pro-family movement. What I like about it is it just shows the joy of a family. I know a lot of you, there's not a lot of joy in your family right now because it's been a rough year. We made the decision to cut off cable news in our house about a year ago. And what I liked about this video is it just showed our families we need to shelter. You said your biggest fear with your kids is that their imagination is punctured. We need to create beautiful, joyful, peaceful homes for our family, but then we need to be raging and battling for our children in Washington, protecting their interests while we create a beautiful, wholesome garden of love in our home and our neighborhoods.
That's exactly right, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Brother, it's good seeing you.
Good seeing you,
and it's
too.
good to see just you and your wonderful wife, how you flourished since I first met you in Des Moines, Iowa in 2007. And I can't wait to see what the next 15 years hold. I told you we'd be fighting together for the rest of our lives.
You did, and you were right.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, Terry Schilling. All right, this was a fun interview. It is Father's Day, or more likely the day after Father's Day. You're in the gym or you're on the Peloton doing whatever you guys do. I get all these emails that you listen while you go for your walks, you go for your runs. For those of you who are fathers, I hope this inspired you. For all of us who are members of families, I think we need to join with APP to make sure our values are being fought for in Washington, D.C. As a father, I can tell you that this year I've really recommitted myself to serving my family, protecting my family, and making sure I fill our world with joy, make sure my children live in a peaceful environment, and they have hope and love. So I hope you had a beautiful Father's Day. Have a wonderful Father's Day. This episode, as always, has been brought to you by Movie to Movement, Divided Hearts of America. Great Father's Day movie. Bella, a great Father's Day movie. Crescendo, more of a Mother's Day movie, but check out our movies. Voiceless. I think half my movies are Father's Day movies. Go to movieToMovement.com. If you're looking for a film to watch with the family this Father's Day, check out Bella, check out Voiceless, check out Divided Hearts of America. As always, the Vulnerable People Project at thegreatcampaign.org. And you know what you need to do. You need to fill your home and your father's home with MyPillow products. Go to MyPillow.com, use the code Jones, and again, go to SaveTheFamilies.app, become a member, and if you use the code Jones, you get a membership at a discounted rate. All right? Until next time, it's the Jason Jones Show.
This has been the Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media.